Take Me Home Tonight, which is a completely different kettle of fish. Take Me Home Tonight is a throwback post-high school, in fact, post-college comedy, which refers back to all those kind of movies of the 80s like Risky Business and Ferris Bueller. The story is, central character has left school where he was in love with his high school sweetheart, never got to tell her that he was going to do that, went off to college, became qualified, left college, came back, is now working in the local video store because he can't decide what it is that he actually wants to do with his life. Into the local video store comes the girl that he loved when he was at high school but never told her that he loved when he was at high school. She now is working in banking, so he pretends that he is working in banking in order for her to pay attention to him, because he thinks that this might be the moment he can finally get in which he can tell his high school sweetheart that he loves him. But of course very soon they go to a party in which he has to pretend that he is in banking when of course he's not. Here's a clip.
You know, Matt doesn't seem like a Goldman Sachs man to me, Tori. Most of those blowhards can't shut up about work. No, seriously, Matt, tell me the department, let me do the math. I know a lot of people over there.
What department?
Yeah, Matt, what do you do?
Do you guys know yen? I mean, say yen gets transferred from Mr. Nariata's bank in Tokyo on a Monday, and it lands in Rome. So what's 0.467 times 32? 149.5 lira, right? Wham, Mr. Roma takes that, flips it over to Mr. Queen Elizabeth. So what's 149.5 divided by 22.3? 6 pounds, British sterling, and 78 pence, right? Wham, he takes it, flips it over to Mr. USA Today before opening bell. So what's 6.78 divided by 1.68? It's 3.99 big bad greenbacks. And guess who Mr. Yankee Doodle Dandy wires it to over the international date line? Mr. Nariata. How much is that yen worth now? 1.012, 1.2% more in one day. 1.2% times 365 days. I mean, I'll do the math, but it's a lot of blowfish. So that's what I do, Pete.
The problem with that is a bad clip.
Well, it was quite an interesting clip. Can I ask a question?
Yeah. What?
Does he not know that the lira doesn't exist anymore?
No, but it's a throwback. It's
okay,
fine. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. There's also the point when saying it worked for Goldman Sachs, but it's fine. So it's it is a throwback comedy. So we get big hair, and we get it starts off with Video Killed the Radio Star. Did I not make that clear in the setup?
Clearly not clear enough.
I'm sorry. I thought I did. So here's the thing about this. The problem with the film is that it sort of falls between two stools in what it wants to be. I mean, there's on the one hand, it sort of has an eye on that indie sensibility, post-high school nostalgic romp thing. So, I mean, I think the high watermark of that will be things like Grosse Point Blank. Remember when John Cusack has to go back to his high school reunion, but by this point he's become a hitman. And recently we had Hot Tub Time Machine, which I didn't like at all, but that idea about them going back and experiencing again, you get all the old 80s fashions and all that sort of stuff. Or there's a little bit at the beginning of the sort of high fidelity edge to it. But then there's also what it's got its eye on is the American Pie teen frat boy comedy market, in which there's standard knockabout, slightly gross humour, and it refers all the way through to films like Risky Business. I mean, there is a couple of moments when it's clearly doing riffs on Risky Business. You remember Risky Business, the Tom Cruise movie, which launched Ray-Ban sunglasses, as far as I can remember, and had a soundtrack by a Tangerine Dream. And so it's referring back to a bunch of movies that are kind of quite fun. I mean, Ferris Bueller still remains the high watermark of all that, but it's also looking to have a slightly more independent, and consequently what happens is it doesn't end up being either one of those two things. It falls between two stools. Now, I saw it in a screening with James King just before James King was going off to Cannes, so he was obviously the fantastic.
Why aren't you in Cannes this week?
Well, I'm not going this year.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's a very, very good thing. But
do you want me to go?
No, but you do love it so much. I'm surprised that you haven't gone back to the.
No, well, I've done 5 years, so I didn't feel that.
That's probably enough, really.
Yeah, and also cutbacks. So it is neither independently spirited enough to be an indie film, nor gross out frat boy enough to be a gross out frat boy comedy. But that said, it's kind of it has a certain casual, charming appeal in places. And the reason I mentioned James King was that James King is a huge teen movie fan. Okay, that genre to him is what horror is to me. And I kind of laughed at some of the gags that was kind of quite funny. There's the guy Dan Fogler who plays the sort of the great big lunking best friend who's out of control and steals cars and does all the shouting and the swearing and behaving badly. And then there's Topher Grace, who's the guy who's trying to hold it together and win his high school sweetheart's heart. And it all plays out in much the way that you expect, except that it doesn't quite go either this way or that way. But en route, there are a couple of possible gags. Anna Faris is in it, who's always quite fun. It sort of runs out of steam, as these things always do, and therefore has to end up with some kind of action climax which involves some ridiculous teenage stunt. Actually not teenage, because they're not teenagers anymore, they're now post-college age. But it's perfectly fine along the way. It doesn't actually, in the end, add up to very much. It's not Peggy Sue Got Married, which I still think is the best of all of these films. If you're talking about going back to high school, I love that. The Francis Ford Coppola movie in which Kathleen Turner bangs her head and suddenly wakes up and she's in high school, but she's able to relive high school with the knowledge of having then grown up and and learned all those lessons. It's like that thing in that Faces song. I wish that I knew what I knew now when I was younger.
There's a lot of singing on today's programme.
Fine, well, I'll knock it on the head in that case. So it is neither one nor t'other, but as it sort of trundles along in its nice old nostalgic way, I laughed quite a few times. I certainly hit the 5 laugh base minimum, and unremarkable but not unlikable. And I asked James King, what did you think? As I said, he's a really big fan of teen comedies. He kind of felt the same way as me. It was kind of okay. It didn't really throw its hat completely into the ring either side, and that was its failure. But on the other hand, there were some chuckles along the way, and the nostalgic quality was quite cute.